Hello everyone! Today, I will be listing off 10 of my favourite Mario Kart Wii Tracks. Keep in mind that I will not be including retro tracks because that deserves a list of their own. So without further ado, let's go. Dry Dry Ruins. Now this track takes elements from both Dry Dry Desert and Yoshi Desert, with the Yoshi Sphinx in the background. So first you drive through a desert as the name implies. You drive over a bridge and past the Yoshi Sphinx, which I thought was a nice callback to Yoshi Desert in Mario Kart Super Circuit. But then after that you drive into the ruins, and when you first drive in, the music changes, which I thought was a really nice touch. When you first enter the ruins, there's a half pipe to get you across the sand that's found on the ground. And then right after that, you will be greeted by a really sharp turn, and then you will be in this room where the sand falls from the roof of the ruins. And in each lap, it fills up to the point where you have to drive around it. Right after you're done with that, you will be greeted with a ramp that leads you back into the desert. Now look, I don't think it's the greatest track of all time, but I still enjoy it to some extent. Overall, a decent fun track. Have you ever wanted to drive around a volcano? Well, now you can with Grumble Volcano. The track first starts with you driving in a straight line into the volcano, and once you enter inside, you are greeted by a bunch of castle-like pillars and a moving platform, with a ramp right before it that you are able to trick off. Once you enter the castle structure, right there you have two different paths, one going up and the other going on the same surface as the rest of the track. You then drive on two moving platforms, and once that's done, you end up driving around an erupting volcano, avoiding everything it throws at you. You then get greeted to two separate paths. Both of them are pretty much the same, except one is higher than the other. And instead of a boost pad, you are given several ramps at the bottom one. And while you drive on them, you also have to avoid the fire snakes found at this point of the track. And what's pretty cool is that after a while the whole track starts to fall apart, which I thought was a brilliant addition to this track. Now what I like about this track the most is its environment. What I mean by that, it nails that volcanic environment. But at the same time, the track does not go too over the top, as it does have that Mario feel with it, with the pipes and question marks found throughout the track. I also love the inspiration from Lakeside Park in Mario Kart Super Circuit, with both volcanoes shooting stuff onto the track. Overall, a very fun track to play on and is definitely enjoyable. So here we have the third track in the Mushroom Cup. Mushroom Gorge is a very creative and enjoyable track. You start off by driving on a dirt road. With a small turn you then end up on a bridge, which you then proceed to bounce on a red mushroom. You then are greeted to two separate paths. The first one has two red mushrooms and one green mushroom, and the other one is just a dirt road with two boost panels. Once you finish that part of the track, you end up in a cavern, and the track turns into only mushrooms, here with two paths. You can take the first one leading in somewhat of a straight line, and the other going straight up and then straight down. After that, you get led back to the dirt road, and then you have completed one lap. Now look, I guess the main reason why I like this track so much is because of how creative it is. Like, bouncing on mushrooms. That was a brilliant idea. Whoever created this track, they are amazing. And whoever decided to put this track in the Mushroom Cup, you are also amazing. Now look, I don't think it's the greatest track ever, but it's definitely a brilliant, creatively put together track. So here is another course from the Mushroom Cup, Toad's Factory. So you start off just outside the factory only to make your way inside. After you make a small turn, you will end up in a room full of conveyor belts and with giant presses. There are 3 conveyor belts, 2 going back and 1 going forward. After you drive past the conveyor belt section, you will end up back outside where you will trick off a boost panel ramp onto a moving platform. Then you will drive through a straight section with conveyor belts going side to side with several boxes that give you different items. Once you pass that, you drive back into the factory where you will get led back to some more conveyor belts. The difference with these ones is that after a little bit they swap sides, which I think is a nice touch. Once you get past the conveyor belts, we get led into a room where there's smoke with red sirens going off. I don't know why this is happening, but whatever. After all that, you end up going off a boost panel ramp which leaves you outside the factory, where you will have to deal with a lot of dirt ramps and mud tractors covering the boost panels. Toad Factory is definitely one of my favourite Mushroom Cup tracks along with Mushroom Gorge, mainly because it's not too difficult, but at the same time, it's not too typically easy. Mix that in with some creativity and the whole factory theme, this track is definitely a great one to play on. And here we have the third track in the Flower Cup. DK Summit takes place in a snowy mountain, taking a lot of inspiration from DK Mountain and DK Pass. So the race starts with you driving on a wooden boardwalk, and then you end up going into a cannon which shoots you to the summit. Once you first get to the summit, you have a lot of half pipes to do tricks on. Once that's all done, you do a trick on a boost panel, and wait, hold on. Is that a statue of Mario on a Donkey Kong course? Wow, that's kind of weird. You could easily have a statue of DK snowboarding, but nope. I guess Mario must always have the spotlight on him, even though this is not his track. Well anyway, once you pass the Mario statue, you end up in this area with a lot of snow piles and a boost panel to do tricks on. You then end up on this curvy path which leads you to a huge half pipe where you have to use the ramps to avoid slowing down in the snow. But at the same time, you also have to look out for the Shy Guys snowboarding in the area. DK Summit is a great one to race on mainly because of its inspiration from other DK courses, and it uses the snow theme really well. So here we have the third track in the Special Cup, Bowser's Castle. So the track begins with you driving off a bridge into Bowser's mouth. You then enter a room where the hallway is incredibly wavy. You then make some sharp turns while avoiding some thwomps that can be found throughout the track. After all that, you end up in a room where a giant mechanical Bowser starts breathing fireballs onto the track, and you have to avoid them by taking the vertical dash panels, which I think is an awesome idea for a Bowser Castle track. After all that, you have two separate paths, which both of them are pretty much the same. You then end up dodging some fire and more thwomps. You jump up a boost panel ramp avoiding a fire bar, and lastly you trick off some geysers. Now look, this is considered the best Bowser's Castle, and I can totally understand why. Now personally, it's not my favourite Bowser's Castle track, but it's definitely in my top 3 Bowser Castle tracks. Overall, a fantastic track to race on. Man, who knew a mall would lead to one of the greatest Mario Kart Wii tracks? Coconut Mall is, as the name implies, is set in a mall on Isle Delfino. The track starts with you driving into a mall and driving up some escalators. You then end up in a room with 4 different paths, one leading back down to the main floor, 2 of the paths are exactly the same, and the other has a neat shortcut. Once you are done with that area, you then trick off a fountain and go up some more escalators. After that part, you end up in a garden with bumps to do tricks on, and another fountain. After that, you have 2 separate paths, one leading you straight down with a small boost pad, and the other one leading you straight up, which you can trick off a huge ramp that's high up off the ground. Once down, you end up in the car park, where you will have to avoid the Miis driving in the area. I guess why I really like Coconut Mall is because it nails that mall environment perfectly. It also nails that Isle Delfino feel as well. Overall, a very creative and fun track. So now we have the second track in the Star Cup. Koopa Cape has honestly been one of my favourite Mario Kart tracks of all time. So we start off on a cliff, and we take a jump off a boost panel to end up onto another area of the cliff. We then drive onto this rock formation with grass and Goombas to avoid, and then wooden ramps to do tricks off. After that area, you trick off another ramp and you end up in a stream, where you will pass many trees and billboards along the way. You can also drive through some Koopa shells, which I thought was a nice touch. After that, you end up in a pipe, and when you go down, the classic pipe sound effect plays, which I thought was pretty cool. You then drive in a glass tunnel underwater, where you will see a bunch of undersea creatures such as Cheep Cheeps and the eel from Mario 64. So then you drive through the tunnel, and you have to avoid getting zapped by the Koopa Zappers while going down another stream. Once you leave the area, you end up back onto the cliff. Now Koopa Cape is just amazing. It's just so fun and creative that no matter how many times I play it, I never get bored. Overall, this has been one of my favourite Mario Kart tracks of all time. So now we have the final track in the Special Cup. This Rainbow Road is actually one of my favourite Rainbow Road tracks of all time. You start off racing downward and you trick off a ramp to end up on another part of the track, where there's a bunch of boost pads, a vertical boost pad and a wavy road with star bits flying around, referencing Super Mario Galaxy. Once you trick off the ramp at the end of the wavy road, you end up on this part of the track where there's two massive holes, which you have to drive around unless you have a mushroom which you can then trick over it. Once you are done with that area, you end up in a launch star, also another reference to Mario Galaxy. You then trick off a vertical boost pad and you end up in another part of the track. Then there are two pathways, which are pretty much both the same. Once down with that, you end up through a light tunnel with Saturn in the background. I guess why I like this track so much is because it's fun, difficult, and it takes a lot of inspiration from Mario Galaxy. Overall, a very fun and unique Rainbow Road track. Yet, Maple Treeway is my favourite Mario Kart Wii track. I mean, this track is truly amazing. So the track starts off with you in a tree. You race down the tree, which then leads you into a cannon, which blasts you off to another tree. You then race on the tree again with bushes that give you items and houses that are in the background. You end up on a branch of the tree that leads you to the top of the tree with more bushes to get items from and giant wigglers to avoid. Once done with that area, you end up back on the branch, which takes you to an area with a vertical boost pad. Once done with that, you're on a small bridge. You then trick off a ramp which takes you to a wavy net that you drive on. The reason why this is number one on my list though is because it's very creative, it's fun, and it nails that autumn season environment so well. The background is also super amazing. I mean, you literally have houses on the tree. That's just amazing detail, and that is why it is number one on my list.